It was a stormy night when Valeria Mendoza, heiress to a hotel empire, saw something that changed her heart forever. While returning to his penthouse in Salamanca, after another empty business dinner, he stopped dead in the pouring rain. There he was, a 28-year-old man in a wheelchair, soaked and shivering under a bus stop awning. His worn clothes contrasted with the elegance of the neighborhood, but his eyes had a dignity that pierced her like lightning. Valeria didn't know that the man was Diego Herrera, a former engineer who had lost everything after the accident that left him paralyzed. He didn't know that his own hotel employees had kicked him out that same afternoon for giving a bad image. Fi definitely didn't know that those 2 words she was about to utter, "come with me," would spark a love story that would challenge everything they both believed about social differences, true wealth, and the transformative power of authentic love. Valeria Mendoza left the Villa Magna restaurant, adjusting her cashmere coat as the November rain lashed the streets of Madrid. At 30, she had inherited Spain's largest hotel empire, but that night she felt emptier than ever. He had just closed a $50 million merger at a dinner where he had pretended to smile for 3 hours. Her driver was waiting for her with the Bentley, but Valeria signaled him to leave. "I needed to walk, to breathe, to feel something real after another night of hollow conversations about numbers and benefits." She lived in luxury, but she had forgotten the last time she had a genuine conversation with someone. As he walked down Serrano Street toward his penthouse, the storm intensified. She took refuge under the awning of a bus stop and was then spotted by a young man in a wheelchair, completely soaked, who looked at her with a mixture of surprise and resignation. Diego Herrera was 28 years old and until 6 months ago had been an engineer at a telecommunications company. The car accident that had shattered his spine had also shattered his life as he knew it. His girlfriend had left him. He had lost his job due to constant sick leave, and that afternoon, the Mendoza hotel employees had kicked him out of a lobby where he was sheltering from a cold. Valeria looked at the man in front of her. Despite his soaked clothes and precarious situation, there was something about him that immediately captivated her. Her dark eyes had a depth that contrasted with the empty stares of the men in her social circle. He didn't look at her with the usual greed that people usually get when they find out who she is, but with a mixture of curiosity and weariness. Diego recognized the woman immediately, Valeria Mendoza, the heiress whose hotel empire had just made him homeless. The irony of the situation was not lost on him, but he was too exhausted to feel bitter. "I just wanted to find a dry place to spend the night." The rain was getting heavier and the temperature was dropping. Valeria looked up at her penthouse, visible from where they were, with its illuminated windows and heating. Then he looked at Diego, who was shivering despite trying to hide it. At that moment he made a decision that would change both of their lives forever. The words came out spontaneously, charged with a compassion she herself had not expected to feel. Diego looked at her in disbelief. For months he had faced rejection, pity, and indifference. That the woman whose empire represented everything he had lost would offer him help was something his mind struggled to process. For a moment, he considered rejecting the offer. His pride, one of the few treasures he had left, rebelled against the idea of accepting charity. But the cold was merciless, and something in the woman's eyes told him that her gesture was not born of pity, but of something deeper. Valeria pushed her wheelchair through the wet streets of Madrid, aware that each step took her further away from her world of privilege and closer to a reality she had never imagined. Diego remained silent, lost in his own thoughts, as they both headed toward a future that neither of them could foresee. Upon arriving at the building where Valeria lived, the doorman looked at them with ill-disguised surprise. "I had never seen Miss Mendoza accompanied by someone like Diego." Valeria ignored his gaze and led Diego toward the private elevator that led directly to her penthouse. As they climbed the 15 floors in silence, they both knew that something fundamental had changed in their lives. Valeria had broken all the rules of her world by bringing a stranger home off the street. Diego had accepted help from someone who represented everything he had lost. Neither of them knew what would come next, but they both felt it was the beginning of something extraordinary. Valeria's penthouse spanned 300 square meters of minimalist luxury. Floor-to-ceiling windows offered panoramic views of Madrid, while the interior design combined contemporary art with designer furniture. Diego watched everything with a mixture of wonder and melancholy, remembering when he too had dreamed of living in a place like that. Valeria moved through her space with the ease of someone born into abundance, but for the first time in years, she was aware of the contrast. Watching Diego in his living room, he realized how cold and empty his life really was. Everything was perfect, but nothing had a soul. She made hot tea and offered him dry clothes that had belonged to her brother, who had died in a skiing accident 2 years earlier. While Diego was changing in the bathroom, Valeria was left alone with her thoughts. She didn't understand what had prompted her to bring a stranger into her home, but something in him had awakened a humanity she thought was lost. Diego returned dressed in clothes that fit him perfectly, as if fate had conspired for that moment. Sitting opposite each other on the Italian leather sofa, they began to talk. At first, they were cautious exchanges, but gradually the barriers began to fall. Diego told his story without self-pity. He had studied engineering at the Polytechnic University and worked on telecommunications projects that connected rural towns with the digital world. The accident occurred when he was returning from installing antennas in a town in Cuenca. A truck had run a red light, and his life changed in seconds. Valeria listened fascinated. I've never met someone who spoke about their work with such passion, who had built something tangible that improved the lives of others. Their own world was reduced to numbers on balance sheets and decisions that affected markets, but not real people. The conversation lasted until dawn. Diego told him about his life before the accident, his dreams of starting a social technology company, and how the system had abandoned him when he needed it most. Valeria shared her own gilded prison, the loneliness of being seen only for her fortune, the constant pressure of maintaining an empire, the total absence of authentic relationships. As the sun began to filter through the windows, they both realized they had shared more honesty in one night than in years of superficial relationships. Diego prepared to leave, grateful for the hospitality, but aware that they belonged to different worlds. Valeria stopped him with a proposal that surprised even her. His company needed technology consultants to modernize its hotel systems. Diego had exactly the experience they needed. It wasn't charity, he insisted. It was a business opportunity that would benefit both of them. Diego looked at her skeptically. He knew it was a gesture of kindness disguised as a business opportunity, but he also recognized that it was his first real chance to rebuild his professional life in months. His pride fought against his practical need. Valeria added that she could stay in the guest apartment while working on the project. It was a completely independent space in the same building, designed for executive guests. Diego would have his privacy, and she would have the peace of mind of knowing that she was helping someone who truly deserved it. The proposal hung in the air between them. Diego knew that accepting meant crossing an invisible line between his old world and a completely new one. Valeria knew she was risking her reputation and breaking all the unwritten rules of her social class. But looking into each other's eyes, they both understood that some opportunities only come once in a lifetime. Diego nodded slowly, sealing an agreement that went far beyond business. Valeria smiled for the first time in months, with genuine happiness. Neither of them knew that this decision would lead them down a path that would transform not only their individual lives, but would also confront them with all their prejudices about love, social class, and what it truly means to be rich in life. Diego's first days working for Mendoza Hotels were a revelation for both of them. Valeria had expected him to integrate gradually, but Diego immediately demonstrated why he had been an exceptional engineer. His proposals for modernizing hotel systems were not only innovative, but also demonstrated a deep understanding of how technology could enhance the human experience. Working from the guest apartment, Diego transformed what had been an impersonal space into a true laboratory of ideas. Valeria began finding excuses to visit him, fascinated by watching him work. I had forgotten what it was like to be around someone passionate about their work, someone who created rather than just managed. Diego, for his part, discovered that Valeria was much more than a spoiled heiress. He had a keen business mind and a work ethic that rivaled her own. But more importantly, He began to see glimpses of the real woman behind the executive facade. When she forgot to live up to her class expectations, Valeria was funny, curious, and surprisingly vulnerable. The transformation was gradual, but inevitable. Business meetings stretched into long dinners where they talked about everything except business. Valeria discovered that Diego had a completely different perspective on the world than anyone she had ever met. He helped her see her empire not as numbers on a balance sheet, but as places where people created memories, celebrated important moments, found refuge. Diego found in Valeria someone who truly listened to his ideas without condescension. She not only understood his technical proposals, but also enhanced them with her business knowledge. For the first time since the accident, he felt valued for his mind, not defined by his disability. The turning point came during a storm similar to the night they met. Diego was working late when the power went out throughout the building. Valeria came down with candles and a bottle of wine, suggesting they take a forced break. Sitting in the dark, lit only by the flickering of candles, the last barriers between them began to crumble. Valeria confessed that she hadn't had a real relationship in years. The men she knew only saw her as an opportunity to access their fortune. Diego told her about his ex-girlfriend, who had left him telling him he couldn't handle this while pointing at his wheelchair. In that intimate conversation, they both acknowledged that they had found something they had stopped searching for, a genuine connection with someone who valued them for who they truly were. Valeria didn't see Diego as a charity, but as a brilliant and independent man. Diego didn't see Valeria as a source of financial security, but as a fascinating woman who had chosen to be with him. When the lights came back on hours later, something fundamental had changed between them. They were no longer simply boss and employee or benefactor and beneficiary. They were two people who had begun to fall in love against all odds and social expectations. The following days were filled with new tension. Both were aware of the change in their relationship, but neither knew how to navigate the complications it entailed. Valeria was torn between her genuine feelings and the expectations of her social world. Diego struggled with uncertainty about whether Valeria could truly love someone like him, or if this was just a phase of rebellion against her own class. The answer would soon come when the outside world discovered their relationship, and they would both have to decide if what they felt was strong enough to face the coming storms. The news of Valeria Mendoza's relationship with Diego Herrera exploded in the Spanish tabloids like a bombshell. The heiress and the pauper, love or charity, the fall of a dynasty. The headlines were increasingly cruel. Photographs of Diego entering and leaving Valeria's building became material for television programs that dissected every aspect of his story. Valeria's family reacted with predictable horror. His uncle Eduardo, chairman of the board of directors, called an emergency meeting where he was presented with an ultimatum. Are you enjoying the story? Leave a like and subscribe to the channel. Now we continue with the video. Terminate the relationship immediately or face a legal battle for control of the company. He was reminded that he had responsibilities to thousands of employees and shareholders who could not afford his emotional whims. Diego faced his own personal hell. The social media comments were vicious, portraying him as a profiteer who had seduced a vulnerable woman. Former colleagues and acquaintances came out of the woodwork to give malicious interviews about his alleged history of manipulation. The weight of media attention was overwhelming for someone who only wanted to rebuild his life in private. The pressure reached its peak when Valeria arrived at Diego's apartment one night and found him packing his belongings. He explained that he had decided to leave Madrid, to disappear until the media storm passed. He couldn't bear to see how his presence was destroying her life and reputation. Valeria stood paralyzed watching the man she loved, preparing to sacrifice her own happiness to protect him. At that moment he understood that he had to make the most important decision of his life. She could choose the safety of her known world or fight for the only true relationship she'd ever had. His response was to call a press conference for the next day. Diego tried to dissuade her, knowing that publicly confronting her detractors would only intensify the scrutiny. But Valeria had made her decision with the same determination she had used to expand the hotel empire. The press conference was a defining moment. Valeria, elegant and implacable, faced the media with an honesty that completely disarmed them. She did not deny her relationship with Diego, nor did she apologize for it. Instead, he spoke of a man who had transformed not only his company systems, but its understanding of what true value meant. He explained how Diego had revolutionized the operational efficiency of his hotels, increasing both customer satisfaction and profit margins. But more importantly, she described a man of exceptional integrity who had helped her remember that business success without human purpose was completely empty. The journalist's questions became progressively more respectful as Valeria systematically debunked each malicious insinuation. When someone suggested that Diego was taking advantage of her wealth, she responded that, on the contrary, he had enriched her in ways that money could never buy. Diego listened to her from his apartment, feeling a mixture of love, gratitude, and terror at the consequences this could have for her. Valeria was risking everything to publicly defend him. The reaction was immediate and divided. A portion of Spanish society rallied around Valeria, seeing her relationship as an inspiring story that transcended social barriers. Another part condemned her for betraying her class and compromising the family legacy. But for Valeria and Diego, public opinion had become irrelevant. They had passed the test of fire and emerged more united than ever. They knew they would face more challenges, but they also knew that together they could overcome anything. That night, while dining at Valeria's attic, surrounded by the lights of Madrid, they both realized they had crossed a point of no return. They were no longer just two people in love. They were partners in a quiet revolution against the social expectations and prejudices that had defined their previous lives. Months after the press conference, Valeria and Diego's lives had found a new balance. The initial scandal had gradually faded, replaced by genuine curiosity about this unconventional couple who defied all established social norms. The relationship had faced trials that would have destroyed less solid romances. Some members of Valeria's family had completely cut off contact, while others had come to grudgingly respect her obvious happiness. Diego had lost some friends who couldn't overcome their own prejudices about class differences, but he had gained the respect of colleagues who admired his professional integrity. Professionally, the partnership had been a resounding success. The technological systems Diego had implemented in the hotel chain had resulted in significant increases in both efficiency and customer satisfaction. More importantly, they had collaborated to create a foundation that provided technological training to people with disabilities, helping them reintegrate into the workforce. Valeria had discovered a passion for social work that she never knew she had. Working alongside Diego at the foundation, I had seen firsthand how technology could be an empowering tool for people whom society had discarded. His perspective on the purpose of wealth had fundamentally changed. Diego, for his part, had regained the self-confidence that the accident had shattered. Working on meaningful projects, being valued for his expertise, and especially being loved for who he truly was, had healed wounds that went far beyond his physical disability. One spring night, while strolling through the Retiro Park on one of their usual dates, Diego stopped by the Crystal Palace. Valeria noticed that he was nervous in a way she hadn't seen before. With slightly trembling hands, he pulled a small box from his jacket. The proposal was simple, but profound. Diego told her that she had saved his life that rainy night, but more importantly, she had given him back hope for the future. He asked her to marry him, not for convenience or security, but because he had found in her his true life partner. Valeria was speechless for the first time in months, looking at this man who had completely transformed her understanding of love and purpose. The answer was obvious, but the implications were enormous. Marrying Diego would permanently seal her rift with certain sectors of Spanish society, but it would also formalize the most authentic and productive partnership of her life. Her answer was an immediate and unequivocal yes, followed by tears of happiness that surprised both of them with their intensity. The wedding took place 6 months later at Valeria's family estate in Toledo, a property that had been in the family for centuries. It was an intimate ceremony that reflected the values that had come to define their relationship: authenticity, inclusion, and celebrating differences. Guests included an eclectic mix of Madrid high society, Diego's engineering colleagues, foundation employees, and patients who had been helped by his programs. The diversity of the attendees told the story of how two seemingly incompatible worlds could merge into something beautiful. During the ceremony, both Valeria and Diego spoke about how their love was born, not in spite of their differences, but precisely because of them. Each had contributed perspectives that had enriched the other in ways they would never have imagined possible. The celebration stretched into dawn with music that blended traditional flamenco with contemporary compositions, symbolizing the perfect fusion of tradition and innovation that had come to characterize their lives together. As they danced their first dance as a married couple under the Castilian stars, Valeria and Diego knew they had created something extraordinary, a partnership based on mutual respect, genuine admiration, and a love that transcends any social or physical barriers. Her story had become an inspiration to others facing their own challenges with societal expectations, proving that authentic love always finds a way to prevail. 2 years after their wedding, Valeria and Diego had built a life that exceeded their wildest dreams. His foundation had grown to become the leading organization in Spain for the employment integration of people with disabilities, with programs in 15 cities and plans for international expansion. The Mendoza hotel chain had undergone a complete transformation under his joint leadership. Diego had revolutionized not only the technological systems, but also the corporate culture, implementing inclusion policies that had turned the company into a model for the entire industry. Valeria had found her true calling leading corporate social responsibility initiatives. His apartment in Madrid had become an informal lounge where business people, activists, artists, and engineers mingled. The dinners they hosted were famous for the stimulating conversations and innovative projects that emerged from these unexpected connections. Diego had returned to the university as a visiting professor, teaching a course on inclusive technology that attracted students from all over Europe. His classes were legendary, not only for the technical content, but for the life lessons he shared about resilience, adaptation, and the importance of never letting circumstances define you. Valeria had begun writing a book on ethical business leadership, documenting the lessons learned during her company's transformation. Publishers from around the world competed for the rights, recognizing that her personal story had given unique credibility to her ideas about corporate responsibility. But the most important project came when they decided to adopt a child. After months of screenings and interviews, they were selected to adopt Carlos, an 8-year-old boy with cerebral palsy who had spent years in the foster care system without finding a permanent family. Carlos's arrival completed his family in ways no one had anticipated. The boy had faced his own set of medical and social challenges, but in the loving and accommodating home Valeria and Diego had created, he began to flourish. Her contagious joy and unwavering determination inspired them both in new ways. Watching Diego teach Carlos about adaptive technology or Valeria help him with his homework confirmed what they both knew. They had created not only a family, but a model of what was possible when love transcended perceived limitations. One afternoon, as the three of them strolled through the same place where Diego had proposed marriage, Valeria reflected on the extraordinary journey they had taken. From that rainy night when she'd seen a stranger at a bus stop to this perfect moment with her husband and son, her life had been transformed in ways she could never have imagined. Diego, watching Carlos play with other children in the park with the naturalness that characterized all children when not limited by adult prejudices, thought about all the people who had touched their lives throughout this journey. Each challenge had strengthened their relationship. Every victory had been shared. That night, as they put Carlos to bed and he thanked them for being his parents, both Valeria and Diego understood that they had achieved something that goes far beyond personal success. They had demonstrated that authentic love not only transforms the people involved, but creates ripples that touch countless lives. Their story had become legendary in Madrid and beyond, not because it was a fairy tale, but because it was real, complex, and filled with the genuine struggles that all meaningful relationships face. They had proven that social, physical, or economic differences become irrelevant when two people are fully committed to each other. Looking ahead, Valeria and Diego knew they would continue to face challenges. The world hadn't completely changed, and there were still prejudices and barriers to break down, but they also knew that together, as a family, they had the power to continue creating the positive change they wanted to see in the world. Their love had begun with two simple words on a stormy night. "Come with me." Now afterward, those words had become an invitation to all those who believed in the transformative power of authentic love, proving that the deepest human connections often emerge at the most unexpected moments. Like if you believe that love can overcome any social barrier. Comment on which moment in the story moved you the most. Share to inspire those who believe in love that transcends differences. Subscribe for more stories of true love and overcoming difficulties. Sometimes all you have to do is stop on a stormy night to find your destiny. Sometimes two words can change two lives forever. And sometimes the most beautiful love stories are born when we least expect them. Because true love doesn't see differences, but celebrates everything that makes us unique. Z.